This is my little house, and it is autumn, and isn't it gorgeous? Nice and green. My ute named Leroy, my smart car 99, of course. Pretty cool, huh? This is our basic design that we're making. The wire form curved with the bail. This is the same form with the pearl, so I've just soldered a 0.8 millimeter square pearl peg on. And this is the same design with a bezel set aquamarine. So this is just the beginning. You get to take it from there. Today we're making a wire form that describes a solid shape, in this case a shell. I put a little aquamarine bezel set. Down here you could just as easily put a pearl peg and put a pearl in it. So you can see that this is curved like a shell. And this is quite easy to do. This will match the bracelet, the wire form bracelet. We're using 1 millimeter wire, and our first piece of wire needs to be 32 millimeters long, and that's to allow us enough metal for a bail. We need to double that length, so 66, roughly 65 millimeters long. You can just cut this with your side cutters. And we're not going to worry about filing the ends flat, so we're just going to form this. And we need a 5 millimeter mandrel, 6 millimeter mandrel, and we're just going to push the wire around it, make sure it stays tight against the mandrel and that the ends meet. Now we're going to solder that very end bit so that we can form it some more. Hard solder. The end is soldered. Now we're going to measure from the round end 20 millimeters. Just mark that with your Sharpie. And we're going to use our parallel jaw pliers and just give that a squeeze right at that spot. So that's our beginning shape, as you can see. Now we're going to cut our side pieces to fit, and the side pieces need to be roughly 16, so 32 millimeters long. We'll form it around the mandrel and cut the pieces in two to make these little side pieces. 36 millimeters long. Push it around your mandrel. Make sure the ends touch, and that way we know that the curve will be equal. Then we'll cut this right in the middle. Then we'll file both this end and this end to match our piece that's here, because the best fit that you can get will mean a nice tidy piece. And then we'll cut 2 more pieces so that we end up with our basic shape. So take your time, file and fit, because the best fit that you can get will make a good solder join. So just keep filing and fitting, and then once it's all done, we'll put the whole piece up on the solder block and we'll solder the whole thing in one go. Now each one of these side pieces, as you come out, needs to be a couple of mils shorter than the one before it, because we want these ends to fit really close together at the top. Okay, we've got our pieces all cut out and they fit. And now we're going to put it on a nice smooth piece of a charcoal block and solder it. I'm going to leave the layout just the way it is, and I'll pick them up one at a time to place them on the charcoal block. And I'm going to use tweezers. And I'm just going to solder these two in place, and then the next two, and then the next two. I think that way we'll end up with a lot better outcome. So just line it up by eye. Put a piece of hard solder at each one of these spots where it touches. Flux, of course, and then your neutral flame. So we'll just gently warm this up to dry out the flux and to make sure that our solder is in the right spot. I'm just brushing it on and off the flame. And once the flux is dry, the solder won't jump around, and we can just do one join at a time. So I'll just do the first one, circling. The solder will flow. I've got a fairly small flame, so it will take a little bit. Then we move to the next one, and then the next one, and then the last one. And then we'll take our tweezers, put the next set on. And I'm not going to quench this or pickle it or anything. I'm just going to put the next pieces up and solder them. So just use your tweezers. Shift the next ones up into position. If it's not perfect, fix it now, because you can't fix it once it's soldered. And then flux, place your solder bits, warm it up, solder it. Just warm it up, make sure your solder's in the right place. And then just do one join at a time. And when you get to the next one, everything will be nice and warm, ready to solder. And then the next bit. The same old story. Position your wire, flux, place your solder using your wet flux brush, and that way the solder will be fluxed. And then we dry out the flux and solder it. Now, all of the soldering has been done on what I consider to be the back, and this will be well and truly stuck to our solder pad with the flux. So we just warm it up, lift it off with our tweezers, and have a look at the front. And the front should be beautiful. If it isn't, You can flow the solder to make it a little bit nicer, but there won't be any skulls on this side. There won't be any marks where we put the solder. Now, quench this and pickle it. Okay, we're out of the pickle. Pick the best side and hallmark the tab on that side. File the tab on the end flat. Now we're going to form this or not. If you want this nice and flat, say as a pair of earrings, you're basically finished. But what we're going to do is form it and then solder either a pearl peg or a bezel setting on, and then do our bail. So I've got a wooden dapping block, and this is a 19 millimeter diameter ball, and we're just going to, the side that we picked with the hallmark up, we're just going to push our dapping punch into this by hand, and there we have our nice curved shape. Now, flat round pliers, and at whatever size bail you want, grab the end of the wire and just roll it to the back until it touches, and that's your bail. So now this part is finished and you're ready to solder in either your pearl peg or your bezel setting, but do your forming before you solder those bits in. You can just leave this plain if you want, and if you want, you're finished. I would just chuck it in the tumbler. If you decide to polish it by hand with one of these small buffs. It is wire, it is annealed, and it will bend quite easily. So don't hold this on the big Tripoli wheel, otherwise you'll ruin it.